Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you to, well, first of all, Rebecca for offering to hold this very necessary space, and also for Lizzie, one of our trainers who will be hosting our opening practice today. And thank you to all of you who are joining us live. We'll be co-creating this experience together as we usually do for our monthly meetups. I know some of you have been before, and some of you, this might be your first time. And also want to thank those of you listening to the recording. I know there's lots going on and lots of travel and family time in the November and December months. So we appreciate you taking this step towards just listening and being part of this discussion to move towards a more inclusive world for the queer community and for all beings both on the mat and off the mat. So yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to share my appreciation. As those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Molly. I'm the director of YMP, and inclusion and accessibility is my personal passion and also at the heart of what YMP does. So yes, thank you all for being here. So for those of you who don't know, the Yoga Mandala project is a very grassroots project that is supporting those impacted by war and violence around the world with various healing-centered programs, mostly focused around yoga and offering self-regulation tools, as well as empowering humanitarians with self-care support, sustainability support, community care. Oh, Michelle's here. That's so nice. Okay. And trauma-informed facilitation training. So really ensuring we have a humanitarian community and network of yoga teachers and volunteers who are sensitive to trauma and the different needs of the people we serve. Hi, Michelle. So nice to have you here.
Hello. I'm so glad to be here. I'm out in the city and I have my camera off. I hope that's okay, and I'm so sorry that I'm not on video.
Yes, no worries. We understand. So I'll name that as well before we begin. As you know, Michelle, self-care is always at the heart of what we offer. So if you need to shut your camera off or take a pause or a break at any time, you're of course more than welcome to do so. We really appreciate your presence, Michelle, even though you're in the city. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. That feels so safe. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and mute everyone so you don't have any background noises for the practice. And I'm going to pass it over to Lizzie, who I mentioned is one of our lead trainers, who's just going to lead a short arrival practice. And then I'll share, after that, we'll have a little bit of space for sharing and check-ins before we move into the discussion with Rebecca, and then we'll close out with an embodied practice. So I'll pass it to you, Lizzie.
Thank you, Molly. It's lovely to see everybody here today. I just thought we'd just take a moment just to arrive in the space. So bringing yourself into a comfortable position, whatever that is for you this evening. So you might want to remain where you are, or you might choose to maybe lie down for a moment, just giving yourself that time to come into the space. And again, if you'd like to, turn your camera off if they feel more comfortable. So just noticing what it feels like to be here, to arrive in the space this evening or this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are in your day today. And maybe just congratulate yourself for the fact that you've actually taken that time today to arrive, to come and share in community. Sense of learning and creating. And as you sit or lie, just taking that sense of awareness gently inwards. Maybe just checking in with how you're feeling right in this moment. And see whether you can arrive at maybe a thought of where you are without any sense of judgment. Just noticing, how am I feeling today? Maybe tired, bit scattered, sleepy. Just noticing. And with that same sense of gentleness, just bringing the awareness into the body itself. And just noticing how the body feels in this moment. Bringing your gentle awareness to any parts of the body that maybe feel a little bit achy. Or you can just hear that calling, this sense of attention, just drawing to maybe a particular part of the body. And again, with this sense of awareness and gentleness, just acknowledging whatever's around for you. And moving the awareness into the feet, all the way down to the feet. Maybe even just noticing how the feet settle on the ground or on the floor. Maybe there's a warmth in the feet or a coolness. Maybe no sensation at all. But just noticing for a moment. And then shifting the attention a little bit further upwards to the seat. And if you're sitting, maybe feeling the chair beneath you or the cushion. Or maybe just feeling the ground beneath you. Noticing what that feels like. Maybe there's a warmth or a coolness or something else. And then gently travelling upwards, up into the back of the spine, in between the shoulder blades, and all the way up into the back of the neck. And maybe just pausing at the shoulders for a moment and just noticing if there's any movement that you would like to make, maybe around the shoulders. Maybe noticing whether the shoulders feel raised or whether there's a sense of letting go. And then moving up into the head. And just noticing maybe any sensations in the face, between the eyebrows or across the eyebrows, into the jaw. And allowing your sense of awareness now just to settle on a point in the body that feels comfortable for you. So that might just be your breath, maybe just watching the breath moving in and out. It might be the hands, maybe just noticing where they're resting on the body. Might be your seat, noticing how you're sitting. Or your feet, maybe on the floor, or just supported by the ground. Just for a few breaths here, and a few moments, choosing your anchor point. And noticing what it feels like to be here in this moment. And allowing maybe the breath to become a little bit deeper. Maybe taking a breath in through the nose. And as you breathe out, maybe actually opening the mouth a little bit and making a sigh, allowing the breath to just gently move out from the mouth. Maybe just doing that a few times, breathing in through the nose and allowing the breath just to release out through the mouth. And as you do so, just noticing how that feels, whether that feels comfortable, making the choice to maybe take another breath in and out through the mouth. And then when you're ready, just bringing the awareness into the body as a whole. Maybe taking in the shape of the body. Noticing what it feels like to sit here or lie here. And bringing some gentle movement into the body now. Maybe just moving your fingers or your toes. Maybe just allow the body to do what kind of comes naturally now. It might feel like a stretch. Maybe a little bit of a twist. Maybe a yawn. Coming back into the space now, maybe opening the eyes now and joining the group, coming back into your space and just taking a moment to arrive. Noticing what it feels like to be back in the space, seeing everyone's faces. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lizzie. I couldn't stop yawning that whole time. Grateful for that little arrival practice. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording. Yeah, sorry for that announcement. Yeah, so South Africa, the UK, Holland, the US, England, yeah. Great. Okay, so I'm going to switch us over to speaker view. And I will mute myself and give you the full reins, Rebecca.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Rebecca. I'm from South Africa. My pronouns are she, her, and today we're going to be speaking about queer inclusivity in the yoga space. This presentation is specifically for yoga teachers, but it can be applied to any kind of facilitation or just being in space with humans and how to be as respectful as we can be, and always keeping gender and sexuality in mind because it's present. I'm gonna quickly share my screen and get started with this. Okay, so oh, sorry, I don't know what happened. Okay, here we are. I don't know if you guys can see that, but
Okay, I can see everything.
Cool. And as we can see, I already made a mistake because I said you guys. So just because I'm queer doesn't mean I'm perfect. So I just want to say it's important to have compassion for yourself and the people in your community because we will make mistakes. And I think the most important thing is to acknowledge it and try better. So there we go. So on being queer, the word queer used to be seen as an insult. It was a loaded word filled with hatred and violence. However, this word has been reclaimed by the LGBTQIA+ community. And it is most important that people self-identify as queer. So this is the most important thing in that we never want to place the identity of being queer on someone who hasn't self-identified as it. But once someone identifies as queer, you're welcome to ask them if that is how they would like you to refer to them. And if they say yes, then you can use the word. So gender and sexuality are nuanced. They are ever evolving, they exist on spectrums and much more. The word queer is a way to encapsulate this nuance, as well as a way to emphasize those who exist out of a heteronormative cisgendered binary. Queer is not the first word of its kind to be reclaimed, but unlike others, queer seems poised to represent all of us. It's a word charged with as many meanings, emotions, and historical perspectives as there are shades of LGBTQ+ identity. So queer is seen as an umbrella term, although again, it needs to be self-identified. And being queer is a valid gender identity and sexuality. So someone can sexually identify as queer and their gender can be queer. And it can be an umbrella term, but it's not always an umbrella term. So it can be a little bit confusing in the beginning, but hopefully with some time and more exposure to queer communities and queer people, you can familiarize yourself with the word and yeah, just get more and more comfortable with it. So I'm going to just go through some definitions, and just a disclaimer, these definitions are ever changing and evolving, and everyone will have a different experience within the definitions, so they're not clear cut. And I think that that's the most important thing to understand when it comes to the queer community. It's always going to be a unique experience for the different people, and we can never have like a fixed identity, and there always needs to be a sense of fluidity and understanding that someone's experience is evolving. And this is important for all communities. The fact that we are so nuanced, we exist on spectrums, and things are not always as they seem at first. So what is sex? So this is problematic in and of itself, but what we in our society understand as sex are genitals, and society has assigned meaning to genitals. So we have these classifications of male, female, and intersex. And these classifications are based off the genitals of a baby, but they're problematic because there are certain societal ideals regarding what genitals should look like. I was studying gender studies when I was in university, and there was quite a horrific statement that came out with doctors, with anthropologists studying with doctors who would assign babies the label of intersex when they had ambiguous genitals. And this problematic statement was, it's easier to dig a hole than build a pole. And basically what that kind of points to is the precariousness of this sex classification and the stereotypes that we have. So if a assigned male has genitals that don't look like what society thinks the penis should look like, then often little babies will get the assignment of intersex, and their genitals will be mutilated. And so it's really, really terrible. It's really sad. And it's important to understand that these classifications are built upon these cisgendered, heteronormative, patriarchal ideals for our society. Then we have gender identity. So each person's internal and individual experience of their gender. It's a person's sense of being a woman, a man, both, or anywhere along the gender spectrum. And it may be the same or different from the birth assigned sex. So this is our personal experience, and it's not informed by our genitals, just like our genitals do not inform our gender, and even genitals in and of themselves, it's a problematic classification to think that we can assign male, female, intersex, anything like that. So they exist separately. Then we have gender expression. So this is how a person expresses or presents their gender. This includes their behavior, their outward appearance, such as dress, hair, makeup, body language, and voice. And this is different and not related to their sexual orientation. So if anyone has any questions so far, you can.
I have a question about gender expression. You say it's different and not related to their sexual orientation. Can you explain that? I don't really understand it then.
Okay, so the reason why it's different and not related to someone's sexual orientation is because it's based off of the assumption that when someone expresses themselves like a woman, then their sexual orientation is attracted to a man. And then that would be like a heteronormative assumption, or that men, people who look like men, or what our society classifies that specific look, are just attracted to women. And it's that heteronormative assumption, and that's what it means when they're not related. So basically nothing is related with these categories. So the assigned sex, assigned gender is not related to gender actually, then gender is not related to sexuality, if that makes sense. Is that a little bit clearer?
And when you say queer in the sense of the English word, can it be both a man and a woman who can be queer, or do I understand that well?
So when I say queer, what I'm basically referring to is a nuance when it comes to gender and sexuality. However, it isn't necessarily always an umbrella term. For some people, they might use it as an umbrella term for both their gender and their sexuality. Some people might just use queer as their sexuality. Others might use it for their gender. And it's basically to emphasize the nuance that comes with sexuality, with gender, and with all shades of LGBTQIA+ expression. But it has to be self-identified, yes. Okay, cool. Thank you for your question. So, what does queer inclusive space mean? So queer inclusivity is about creating space with gender and sexuality in mind. It's always about remembering that these exist, and they exist beyond the heteronormative cisgendered binary. I'm moving you around because it's difficult for me to see. Okay. So queer inclusivity is about creating a space which is designed with gender and sexuality in mind. The world is structured to be cisgendered and heteronormative, and often the spaces we create mimic that, even though these things can be subtle and even when people are not intending harm. Queer inclusive space is aware of gender identity and gender expression and knows that neither informs the other. Queer inclusive space is aware, compassionate, and sensitive about people's bodies. Queer inclusive space is aware of sexual orientation outside of a heteronormative binary. So that's exactly what we were discussing earlier, the heteronormative binary, and just being aware that queer inclusion understands that people exist outside of that. So let's talk about how we create queer inclusive space in yoga classes. So I like to begin my yoga classes like this. Hello, my name is Rebecca and I go by she, her pronouns. The best way to invite people to tell you their pronouns is by revealing yours. However, do not force someone to reveal their pronouns. So just because we are saying what our pronouns are doesn't mean that everyone feels comfortable or safe to reveal theirs. But it's just about fostering a community where that starts becoming the norm. And so slowly over time, people can begin feeling more comfortable about revealing what their pronouns are and what they would like to be referred to, how they would like to be referred to. So inclusive language in your yoga classes. So when your students are in front of you, you can say something like, "Hey everyone," or "All right friends, meet me at the top of the mat." When I teach my classes, I say, "Hello my loves," though this might not be appropriate in all settings. Find what works for you and your students. You'll have a personal relationship with your students, so you'll have to use your discretion to know what's appropriate and what's comfortable in your classes. So here's another example. Instead of saying things like, "This pose is good for women when they're on their period," or "Ladies, this one alleviates menstrual cramps," you could say, "This pose is good for when people are on their period," or "This pose eases menstrual cramps when you're on your period." Instead of saying something like, "Women who are pregnant should avoid this," or you should say, "If you are pregnant, avoid this," or "Pregnant people should avoid this." So what we're doing is we're separating gender assignment from the bodily functions. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. So I know that this often comes up when you're teaching classes, when, you know, a student might ask you to clarify if something's safe for them when if they're pregnant, or, you know, this is bound to come up. So you don't have to avoid bodily functions. If you want to speak about periods, if you want to help your students when they're pregnant, or have, you know, various things going on, you don't have to avoid it. There's just a way that you can make this more queer inclusive. And that's always remembering to separate gender from the bodily functions and not assign a gender to bodily functions. So I'm going to give you a little example of a practice that we can do. If you want to turn off your cameras, you can. And I want to invite you to come onto your hands and knees and meet me in downward facing dog. I'm going to demonstrate how we can create queer inclusivity when there's a time that someone might ask you, or you have someone who is pregnant in your class. So this is centered around pregnancy and how to create a queer inclusive practice with regards to pregnancy, especially because pregnancy is seen as something which is gendered and heteronormative in our society. Okay, so coming onto your hands and knees, turn off your camera if you feel called to. I think maybe I should make myself bigger. I don't actually know how to. Okay.
I think you have to stop sharing your screen to be bigger, unfortunately.
Does this work?
I can see you okay.
Okay. Okay, so we're on our hands and knees. I'm going to invite you to arch your spine. Inhale, gazing up. Exhale, rounding your spine. Inhale, gazing up. Exhale, round. Inhale, gazing up. Cat-cow is a safe pose for you to do when you are pregnant. Inhale, gaze up. Exhale, round. I'm going to invite you to move your body in whatever way you feel called to, making some circles or continuing your cat-cow. And then finding stillness. Inhale, coming up into your down dog, generously bending the knees. And I invite you to find movement here if that feels good for you, or you can be still. Inhale and exhale. And then walking to meet your hands. Knees can stay generously bent, or you can straighten the legs. Folding forward. Inhale, rising up. Hands in prayer above head. Exhale, folding forward once again. Inhale, rise up, hands in prayer above head. And exhale, folding forward. You can sway from side to side here if that feels good. Or you can find stillness. Generously bending the knees. And then inhale, hands come to prayer above head. Exhale, sides. Inhale and coming down. You can move from side to side here. And then we're going to fold forward. Forward folds are safe for people when they are pregnant. You can continue swaying here, or you can find stillness. Inhale, rising up. Exhale, bending the knees. Inhale, folding forward. Finding movement or stillness. Whatever you feel your body needs right now in this moment. And then coming into your downward facing dog. Pedaling out the feet, finding a generous bend in the knees, and then coming down onto all fours and leaning back into your child's pose. You are welcome to flip your palms up or leave them down. Inhale and exhale. And then very gently coming onto your backs, slowly bringing your back to the mat. Inhale your legs up, and then on the exhale, moving your legs over to your side. Hands can be on your body. You can cactus the hands out on either side. You can move them up or down. I like to put my hands on my body. Inhale and exhale. The side angle twist is safe for people who are pregnant. Inhale, the legs coming up, and exhale, bringing them down to the other side. Hands once again can be on your body. They can be out to your side, up or down. I like my hands on my body. Inhale and exhale. Bringing the legs back up, hugging them into the chest. And then when you're ready, finding whichever side feels good for you and laying for a moment. You're welcome to close your eyes here or keep them open, softening your gaze. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. And then very slowly making your way up to seated. Rubbing the palms together and placing them over your eyes. And then very slowly opening the eyes. And then bringing your hands down to heart. Inhale and exhale. And then slowly, there's no rush, coming back into the space. Okay, so that's just a little example about how we can include queer inclusive language in our yoga class when we're dealing with pregnancy, or we want to speak about pregnancy or menstruation. If we want to help our students, there's nothing wrong with speaking about pregnancy or periods, things like that. It's just about finding ways that we can be inclusive to whoever our students are. So we have inclusive language. We have not assuming that someone who is pregnant is in a relationship or has a significant other. And let's say a student does ask you about how they can bring their partner into the space and how their partner can help them with yoga poses when they're pregnant. It's just about remembering to say the word your partner instead of assuming that they're seeing someone, you know, or assuming their gender. Okay. If there were any questions about the practice, you can let me know. Okay. So, yeah, we have inclusive language, which are things like I invite you to come to the top of the mat, or tilting your ear to your shoulder. And then we have masculinity and femininity. So this one's quite important, especially in the wellness space. Things like activate your feminine essence can be really triggering for some people, or feel into the masculine energy here, or we're going to do a gentle feminine practice today. We need to be a little bit more aware of how we assign certain qualities to gender. So for example, gentleness, which we often see as feminine, we see strong as masculine, soft as feminine. These are all stereotypes that have been assigned to men and women. And there are no male and female traits, only human traits. It might not feel safe for someone to activate their masculine energy. Moreover, the actual concept is rooted in prejudice and gender stereotypes rebranded to sound spiritual. Ways that you can incorporate the idea of yin and yang into classes in a queer inclusive way could be through working with the elements. So you could say something like, today we're going to activate our inner fire. Though again, elements like water can be triggering, so be careful and know your demographic. Other ways that we can incorporate the idea of yin and yang could be through things like sun and moon. But once again, remember that the characteristics that we assign to the sun and the moon are also just gender stereotypes rebranded. But this is where your creativity as a teacher can shine. You can use affirmations, colors, plants, flowers, something like imagine blue light filling your body. Those kinds of things are ways that we can incorporate ideas of these old concepts in a way that can be a little bit more inclusive to people. Okay. So then we have sexuality. So sexuality would be not making generalized heteronormative assumptions in class. For example, your boyfriends will love this yoga class, or please invite your boyfriends or your girlfriends. You should rather say things like your partner if you want to invite someone significant other to the class, and obviously don't assume that they have a significant other. Sexuality is also relevant to notions about masculinity and femininity, yin and yang, the idea that women occupy the divine feminine and men occupy the divine masculine, and that this is what conscious relating is about, is problematic, violent, and exclusionary. Think outside of duality. This is very prevalent in the wellness space and might not be in your classrooms, but it's still important to think about as these spaces overlap. Remember that just because you resonate with the concept does not mean that it is safe and inclusive for other genders and sexualities. These ideas are rooted in cisgendered stereotypes and assumptions about what it means to be a man or a woman, and are inherently problematic, and that these exist as a pair reinforce heteronormative ideals. So this basically means that there are notions that there is an opposite counterpart to each one. So for example, we have Sorry about that. Yeah, so basically it's about this idea that the opposite of femininity is masculinity. This notion is problematic because it reinforces heteronormative thinking. I'm going to open up the space if anyone has a question about that. Okay. So I'm going to now go into some more definitions that might be helpful during your yoga class and might be a helpful way of understanding what the queer community is going through when it comes to their everyday lived experience. So something that is quite important to know about is body dysmorphia. So body dysmorphia is an anxiety disorder currently listed in the DSM-V that causes individuals suffering to worry about and have a preoccupation with a perceived flaw in their outer appearance. Individuals who experience body dysmorphia have a distorted view of themselves. Body dysmorphia is usually accompanied by deep shame about being in one's body and of what their body looks like. Then we have gender dysphoria. This is different to body dysmorphia. Gender dysphoria is when there is a mismatch or a sense of disconnect between gender identity and one's assigned sex at birth. This is why it is important to not use, well, there's many reasons why it's important to not use gendered language, but often gendered language can really cause harm because it causes gender dysphoria for a lot of people. And this is the same when we gender someone's body that we don't know, when we make, I know that making adjustments is generally not a good idea at all, but let's just say someone asks you in a yoga class to help them. It's still important to remember about gender dysphoria, because the way you touch someone can cause gender dysphoria. So when we're aware about these things, we can be more conscious about how we relate to other people and how we speak to them. And it also allows us to be a lot more compassionate about how other people respond to our yoga classes if they feel they need to not go into a pose, or if a pose makes them feel more gender dysphoria. When we understand these concepts, we can have compassion for people who choose to not go into certain poses, or who feel they need to leave during a class, and to not take that on as a teacher, but to be compassionate. So if someone leaves your class, it's not against you, or if someone doesn't want to go into a pose that you're teaching, it's not against you. And so have compassion for yourself, because people are going through their own experience. It's not that you're a bad teacher or anything like that. We are just here to honor everyone's individual experience and make it a safe space for them to choose to be in poses or not. So then we have transgender. Transgender people are people whose gender identity is different from the gender they were assigned at birth. And note, this might not encapsulate how all individuals feel. Again, it's ever evolving, and people will experience some or all or a little bit of the definitions, and maybe at one point the definition might work for them. At another point, the definition, they no longer resonate with the definition, it no longer encapsulates their identity. So these definitions are just a tiny, tiny glimmer into the larger identity and feelings that the people in the queer communities are going through. So then we have non-binary. So some people do not fit into the category of man or woman. Some people have a gender that blends elements of being a man or a woman, or a gender that is different than either. Some people don't identify with any gender. Some people's gender changes over time. So that's, again, just being aware of the fact that people exist on spectrums and gender is ever evolving and ever changing. And just because one person might resonate with a label doesn't mean that they have the same experience as another person who resonates with the label. Is there a question? Sorry. Okay. All right. So other examples or identities that exist are genderqueer, agender, neutral, bigender, and more. It needs to be self-identified, and people with the same gender might and often do not have their own experience of that gender. No experience is the same. Understand that some poses might make individuals feel dysmorphic. A student might come out of a pose, not go into a pose, or leave during class. Offer the space for them to do this without feeling judged or outed during class. Cultivate self-compassion and compassion for students. So that's exactly what I was saying before. And this is a really nice quote that I found. There is a privilege in entering a yoga studio and not having to face, consider, or think about gender and sexuality. Okay, so again, I know that adjustments are really not recommended. But as a yoga teacher, especially if you're teaching in person, there might be a time when a student will ask you to assist them in a pose, and this really might happen, and you need to use your discretion as a teacher. And please know that you as a teacher can say no, and you're allowed to have boundaries with your students. If you are not comfortable with teaching, doing adjustments, if a student asks, you also have the right to say no. And if you do feel like you would like to help them, then here's ways that you can do this and apply queer inclusivity and queer safety. So understanding that consent is ever changing and is always reversible. Another thing to note is to always check in. So the student might say, can you please help me get into this pose? You can say, sure. And then check-ins would sound something like this. Can I place my hand on your arm? Wait for the response and only continue once they've given you consent. And you need to let them know when you are approaching. Know that queer inclusive space is also space that is aware of dysmorphia. So when someone gives you consent to help them into a pose, know that your touch might also make them feel dysmorphic, and always avoid the chest area. In general, avoid gendering bodies if you have been given consent to approach them. Okay, so this is a yoga teacher who identifies as queer and practices queer inclusive space in their yoga class. And they say the best way to know what a student needs is to foster opportunities for communication. In the same way that you may ask, please let me know if you have any injuries or are pregnant, it's easy to add on or are going through HRT therapy or don't like assists. So HRT means hormone replacement therapy. So you can add that in your class. Okay, and then this is just to end off. Other ways of having an inclusive yoga class are to have LGBTQIA+ flags, gender flags, the language that we spoke about, always know about consent, practice consent, you would say your own pronouns, and as a result, you are inviting people over time to share theirs with you. And knowing that every experience is different and experiences are ever changing. And I added this, this has been updated, but this at the moment is the gender flag, but it's updating all the time, which is wonderful. So this is just the one that I could find. But this is an example of something that you could have in your studio. Okay, are there any questions?
I have a question about water being, what's the English word? Provocative, you said, or challenging, like if you use the word water, but they might feel provoked. I didn't understand why. Why would water make anyone feel uncomfortable?
So water might make someone feel provoked, especially with regards to refugee communities. This is what I learned in the Yoga Mandala training, that in some refugee communities, they might have traveled, had to escape by water. And so that can be really triggering for people. And so I would avoid elements. And that's why I think something that might be a little bit better would be colors, things like that. But if I'm not saying this correctly, maybe Molly could interject, because yeah, I'm still learning also.
That was great, Rebecca. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Does that help answer your question, Lily?
Yeah, thank you.
If there are no more questions, I'm going to do a closing practice. And this is another example of ways that we can use gender and sexuality inclusive language with regards to a color. So here's another example. I want to invite you to turn your cameras off, find a comfortable position, laying down, staying seated. Okay. I want to invite, inhale, and then exhale. And then bringing your awareness to the ground beneath you. Inhale and exhale. Bringing your awareness to the top of your head, your nose, your mouth. Inhale and exhale. Bringing your awareness to your neck, your collarbones, your right shoulder, your right arm, right hand. Inhale and exhale. Bringing your awareness to your left shoulder, your left arm, your left hand. Inhaling and exhaling. Then bringing your awareness to your belly. Noticing the rise and fall as you inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. And then bringing your awareness to your right thigh, right shin, right foot, the whole of the right leg. Inhale and exhale. And then bringing your awareness to the left thigh, your left shin, your left foot, the whole of the left leg. Inhale and exhale. And then bring your awareness to your whole body, envisioning a warm golden light shining above you. This golden light is holding you and enveloping you in love. Let the golden light move along the body, inhaling and exhaling. Inhale and exhale. Then slowly bringing your awareness to your hands, wiggling the fingers, and then bringing your awareness to your feet, wiggling the toes, and then bringing your awareness to the neck, moving it from right to left in circles. And then slowly, without any rush, turning your body over to your side. Inhale and exhale here. Then very slowly moving your body up into your seat. Inhale and exhale. Softening the gaze and bringing the arms up. And then on the exhale, bringing them down, resting the hands on your lap or on the ground, on your legs. You can rub your legs, rubbing the arms. And then give yourself a nice hug. And when you're ready, there's no rush coming back into the space.